Hello, my name is Paul Goza, and today I'm going to talk about how your perspective can change your perceptions. So your perception changes based on your perspective because you have experiences that change how you view the world around you. So we're going to start off with the definition of perception and perspective. So according to the Cambridge Dictionary, perception is an awareness of things through the physical senses, especially sight. So like what you see, what you observe. And for perspective, it is a particular way of doing things that depends on one's experience and personality. So like a precision on a topic like climate change or global warming. So we're going to talk about the connections to stimuli. So first, I'm going to connect it to the looking glass house. So the other side of the mirror represents a change in perspective. So, and with that change in perspective, you have a change in your perception. So when Alice crosses through the mirror, she has a different view of the same world, but it's slightly different because the clock has a face and the chessmen are moving. Now, talking about attitudes towards Muslim women in the West, it's a Western versus Eastern view. Westerners believe that Muslim women need to be saved from oppression, but Muslim women don't necessarily believe that they need to be saved. They don't think of themselves as oppressed. So, but Westerners are trying to force Western culture upon non-Western peoples in an effort to try and save them. So for the historian as a participant, it depends on what side of the argument you're on. So whatever position you're in as a participant affects how you write about the subject. So a soldier versus a bureaucrat writing about a war, a soldier might talk more about death and like their friends dying, whereas a bureaucrat might talk more about how their company lost money or gained money based on manufacturing or a loss of consumer. But also the side of the war matters. In World War II, a German soldier would speak differently than an American soldier. And the same thing for a German and an American bureaucrat. So why does it matter? It matters because it helps to objectify historical documents. And historians can adjust their writing to take their perspective into account. It can also help explain why certain documents are written like they are. And we use this when we source for AP World History. It can also explain why some writers write with bias and others write without bias. If they write without bias, they're taking into account their perspective and trying to look beyond their perspective, trying to see through their perspective, or around their perspective, trying to see from the other side. But if they do write with bias, then they're not trying to look on the other side, trying to see from all angles. So some conclusions and implications. So my conclusion is that people should be aware of how their perspective affects their perception. They should know how to observe and think objectively. They should also be able to adjust their observations in order to be less biased. They should be able, again, back to how they should be aware of their perspective. And their perspective matters because it affects how they view the world and how they interpret what's happening. If you change your perspective, it often changes your perception, and they need to know how their perspective changes their perception. So some limitations to my conclusion is that not everyone will be able to accept that their perspective affects their perception, and so they think that their perspective doesn't have an effect on their views. And sometimes bias can be instructive. As previously stated, AP World History uses that bias to objectify historical documents. Lastly, if there's no bias, then it doesn't always seem like it's a truthful document. Bias gives documents a sense of reality, it make it seem like it was written by someone. It was written by someone who had an opinion. And these are my works cited.
All right.
Thank you.
So let me ask you a couple of questions. So what information did you need that you weren't able to locate, and how did you go about trying to find that information?
I wanted to kind of focus, I wanted to try for the psychological aspect of it, but I couldn't find too much on that, and so I decided to not put it in my presentation because I couldn't find anything that I really wanted to use.
Okay. And then, excuse me. How valid and reliable were the sources you used? I'm sorry. I asked you the wrong question. I apologize. I was reading something else. Okay. How did your conclusion respond to any of the other research that you examined?
The conclusion I came to kind of agreed with some of the sources I used for the historian as a participant. It agreed with it because it showed how based on where you are, like what your experiences are with the topic, can like change how you would write about it as a historian.
Okay. All right. Thank you.